that looks a lot better than it did. It's not going to look like new without putting it on a surface grinder, and I don't have one of those. Well, that looks a lot better. Even the spots that the mice peed on cleaned up fairly decently. There's some pits in them, and I think I'm going to go get some navel jelly and put on there in a couple of spots, but boy, that looks a lot better than it did. This old pad here is just about thin enough to use for a window now. It worked pretty good. I think I'll go tomorrow and get a new one of these, and then we'll try it again, do some more of that, but I'm pretty happy with that. That turned out a lot better than I thought. Some of the places that looked like they were pretty bad, or had some rust on it, was just from the dried out corrosion block on there. That took quite a bit to get that off there. I had to scrub and leave the paint thinner on for a bit to get it off, because it's been on there for a long time and dried on pretty good. And some of the places got affected just from the ammonia smell from the areas where they'd been peeing and stuff. It took a little more for those areas to clean up, but I got those cleaned up pretty good. I still have to do the fence assembly. Even the cutter head is not as bad as I thought it was. It's really rusty on the top side where it was underneath that guard where the mice had been underneath there, but when you rolled it around to the other sides, they actually look pretty good, so that's not so bad. Anyway, I'm still going to think I'm going to put that spiral cutter blade in there. They don't cut as fast as a regular knife blade. Let me think about that. I might just sharpen these blades up and put those back in there. I don't know. We'll see. I had to have that spiral cutter head with the intention to put it in there. And the main reason I was intending to put it in there is to prevent the tear out. A lot of this wood around here has a lot of knots and grain movement and stuff in it, or places where the grain changes and you get a lot of tear out. That's kind of what I was thinking about the main thing for that spiral cutter head was. Plus this yellow cedar is pretty abrasive, and those carbide tips should last a lot longer on that than they do than a regular knife blade. So we got a lot of boards to joint, so we'll see. I'm going to look it up and see how bad it is to change that, how hard it is to change that. But well, I did a pretty decent job getting that top cleaned off, on those tables cleaned off with that real coarse Scotch-Brite pad yesterday. But of course you can't get down into all of the pits and stuff that are in there where the mouse droppings were. That was pretty nasty. I went and got some navel jelly, and I'd used this on the shaper when I was working on that, and that gets the rust out down in the pits. Anybody ever notice how much navel jelly looks like Pepto-Bismol? That's disturbing. I haven't used Pepto-Bismol for years, but I could see where a guy gets to be my age and you start losing your vision and stuff, could accidentally pick that stuff up instead and see the pink. But I don't think that'd clean your pipes out, but it'd probably put an end to your problems. Anyway, it wouldn't be very nice. So anyway, I put some of that on all of the spots that had the pits and stuff in them, and on there from the mouse droppings. Probably should have come out and cleaned it off last night, but I just left it. I just come out today to work on it. It ran too hard to do anything else again today anyway, so it was pretty well dried up, so I scraped off the excess, and then I started cleaning it up. I tried to wash it off with some water, but that wasn't working very good. I went ahead and got the wire brush out and cleaned it up with a wire brush, and that worked pretty good. And I think what I'll do now is I'll go ahead and wash that top off with some fresh paint thinner, and then I'll take the green Scotch-Brite pad and my orbital sander and go over it again, and then we'll dry it up real good, and I'll polish it down with some paste wax and try to get it protected until, well, paste wax should protect it. It doesn't do as good a job as the spray-on corrosion proofing, but at least it's not sticky when you go to put wood on it. That should slippery up that top pretty good. Slippery up that top, that's proper English. So that bed, table, whichever you want to call it, is pretty well cleaned up. I got all the stuff out of the pits. They were pretty bright. Anyway, I washed it real good with acetone until it wasn't picking up any more dirt, any more black stuff or anything. Now I've put a coat of carnauba wax on it. Made sure and got it pretty thick on there so that it'd get down in all the pits and stuff like that. I'll let that flash off and then we'll come back and polish that up, and then we'll do some more work on there. Still got a lot of cleanup to do on the main body of that. I got to open that up and check down inside of it. And I brought the Helix, here it is right here. New head, cutter. There's a new cutter. Well, anyway, I was just looking up some videos on how to do this, and it's pretty simple. The only thing I didn't do, I ordered new bearings for the planer when I did it, but I didn't order new bearings for this, so I'm going to have to wait till I get into it to see how the bearings are on it, to whether I want to replace them right away or not, before I get this thing rolling again. I polished that coat of paste wax off there, and then I went ahead and put a second coat on top of that. Now I've taken the dust collector adapter off of there, and I cleaned out in there with a vacuum cleaner. There's nothing solid in there. There was just sawdust, no big rat's nest like up on top. But I tipped that up so I could look in there and see and make sure, and I could see mouse turds up there on top of that cabinet. So it looks like I'm probably going to have to take that cabinet, or that thing off of there, to get that cabinet cleaned off in there. I want to get all that mouse turds and all that smell out of there and stuff and get that cleaned out. But I've got to take the rabbiting extension off and the extension back there for the fence off to change that cutter head out of there anyway. I guess I'll go ahead and start doing that. I need to go dig out a hex head, Allen head wrench. I think somebody said it was a 6mm or something like that. We'll go see what we can find and see if we can get those two pieces off of there. Well, I got that rabbiting bench off of there. There's two bolts that hold that on. I'd seen on YouTube that somebody said it was a 6mm bolt. Well, I went and looked for 6mm hex keys, brought a couple over. I just happened to find one that was a little bit bigger. I brought over two, and it's not marked. I don't know what it is, maybe 7. But anyway, that's what size the sockets were in those bolts. Maybe the bolts are 6mm, I don't know. Or maybe this is pre-metric on these, I don't know that either. One thing I did find out after I got the bolts loose is you don't have to take them all the way out. That fence is slotted on there, that extension is slotted on there, so once you get the bolts loose you can just pick it up. Take the one off the other side for the fence mount, and then we'll go see what we can do from there. I think I'll polish that wax off there now. It's dried up enough to polish on there. Now the Grizzly video showed these hold downs for these bearings, these end caps, is having 2 bolts that go down from the top and down into the main casting down here. In one video I watched another fella did, showed there's a bolt underneath here. He said it was a 17mm nut, and there is a nut down here that take off, and that would take that end cap off on that end. So unlike the Grizzly one, it's like the old, this is older. This is pretty old table. I've had it for quite a few years. I had one before that was a standard 8-inch joiner, but then they came out with this one with a 75-inch bed on it, table on it, and so I sold the other one and bought this one. And this is the older one. I think the newer ones, the casting, it goes all the way out, so it makes it a 76-inch table on there. Maybe they even have bigger ones now. But this one just has it milled off on this end with about a 5-inch extension on it to make it 75 inches. Alright, that's waxed. I've double waxed it. That's not going to protect it from long-term storage or anything, but hopefully it'll keep it from rusting between now and the time I get ready to use it. So I lowered both beds down, and that exposes this to where you can take this whole head out of there now, where I can take it out, not you. But this whole thing is stiff on there from the old grease and stuff on it, so I'm probably going to want to take those off. I'll have to find the manual for that and see how you take those off and clean that up in there where those the gibs or the dovetails on there that they slide on. Well, I take this apart one piece at a time. That'll make the whole thing a lot lighter to take this main base casting off from the cabinet. Alright, I gotta go see what I can find for wrenches there, some more wrenches. You know, I took all my wrenches over and put them away in the shop where they belong. Actually, I've got these phony little wrenches that came with the planer. That'll tell me what I need if I can get these loose with that. Yeah, 14 millimeter. Can't get loose with that, so I gotta go get a longer wrench. Alright, those are loose. The one on the outside, the working side, the nut came off of it. The one on the pulley side, the nut didn't come off. The stud came out of the bearing cap. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little cold chisel and a hammer and make a couple marks in one of those bearing caps. I'll make them on the one with the pulley goes on, so we can remember which one is which on there. You can make a little mark on it or something with a marking pencil or something like that, but these things are really dirty and going to need to cleaned up, and by the time I get done fooling around, that mark will be gone. So if I make a chisel mark or a couple chisel marks on there, if I was not so lazy, I'd go over and get my letter set and just mark an R on there for a rear or something like that. But if I just mark one of them, that'll be good enough. I only got two, and I should go over and get my ball peen hammer to do that, but I'm too lazy to do that now too. I'd have made 3 marks in there. It probably would have been fine with just one, but that way it won't be a mistake thinking that it just got nicked or something like that. Right, you can see the stud on this one's actually loose. I can take it out, but the nut come off. The stud on this side came out and nut stayed on it. So there's a double pulley here, got 2 set screws on it, and then these are the bearing ends here. That feels pretty good, that one does. And this is the cutter head. So, alright, my battery went dead, and I don't know where it went dead at, so I might repeat some of this stuff, but here's the cutter head. And here's the bearing end blocks here. I took a chisel and marked this one where the pulley is with 3 marks on there, so I'll know which one is which, and that also tells me which side's outside. There's the pulley. It's a double pulley, and it's got 2 set screws in it. Probably the one goes against the key. Yeah, this one goes against the key, and the other one just goes in on the shaft. And then the other bearing end cap is right here. These bearings feel okay. Now on some of those, they have shims in there underneath one bearing cap or the other. This one I looked and there's no shims in it, but you kind of want to remember which one is which so you can balance this cutter head back out again, or square it back out again. I had a little bit of sawdust right in here and some more stinking from the mouse. It's really nauseating, so I'm going to wind up taking this whole thing off, but I'm going to take each one of these tables off of here, each one of these beds off of here, because they're not sliding very smoothly on here. There's old grease and stuff in there, and they're dirty. I can see just a little bit of rust in there, so I'm going to go ahead and take those off of there and clean that up. Each one of these is cast iron. They probably weigh about 30 pounds a piece, and so by taking each one of them off of there, that's going to make this main casting down here a lot lighter and to take off. And I'm going to take it off to clean it out because the smell is still nauseating there. It's really strong. Well, I'm going to take my cutter head over to the shop and work on it over there so we don't have to bring all the tools over here. I've got a puller. I'll pull this pulley off and pull those end caps off, the bearing caps off, clean that up, and then we'll go ahead and put it on the other the new cutter head and get it ready to install, but I probably won't install it until I get everything else all cleaned up on there. I got that pulley and those end caps off of that cutter head. I was going to pull the bearings off there, but I couldn't find my bearing splitter. Went up to the basement looking for it, and I got to looking around up there for it, and I found some new bearings. I got a whole bunch of new bearings that size, so I'm going to go ahead and use those new bearings on this new cutter head. Just leave those bearings on there, and that's what they suggest, is just to put new bearings on there when you change it. So I think I'll do that, and then I'm going to quit for the day. Starting to hurt a little bit here, so I might get that done. Anyway, I'll clean up those bearing end caps and set up this new cutter. It's not a big deal because it's going to rain for the foreseeable future here, so we're not going to get that thing out in the weather. I'm not going to open the door here and do any of this with that until I get the weather for it, so I might as well take my time and do this all right. Somebody that was with a new machine or a machine that was regularly being used, it'd only take a few minutes to do that, maybe a couple hours at the most, but for me it's going to take days. But I've got a lot of other stuff to do beside this. I'm still going to take that thing apart and clean it up and stuff and get all the mouse crap out of there. Anyhow, that's probably enough for today. I'll take that new cutter head over to the shop and work on it over there. I got the new cutter head all set up. The bearings are on it, the pulley is on it, everything's set, ready to go in the machine, in the tool when I get it ready. I went ahead and put the old one back in the old box there. I probably should take it apart and clean it up and stuff and make sure it's preserved, put grease or preservative on it so it doesn't rust up anymore, because there's really nothing wrong with it. Man, you never know the difference between new bearings and old bearings until you try them. Those new bearings feel so much better than the old ones did. The old ones felt fine. They were still in good shape as far as I could tell. There's no rattle in them and no axial movement or anything like that, and they rolled pretty good, and they didn't roll too fast. That's a sign of a bad bearing a lot of times, is when they start spinning real fast. So anyway, they seem like they were pretty good, but these new bearings are just nice, as smooth as silk, and they're a better quality bearing. They're a good quality bearing, a Favner bearing, I think, and a high quality bearing, so they should be better than the ones that were in there, I would imagine. Anyway, that's enough of that for one day.